Yes, seems to be working now. So
Okay.
we may start.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, Yelena, and everyone in Europe and the East. So I welcome Scott Ritter here. We spoke about a year ago or so. I can't even remember. Me and Alex were on with you, Scott, not too long ago. So I figure we'll jump right into it. The first topic I wanted to discuss was the recent discussions about the Havana syndrome. That's just something that over the last year and more recently, the intelligence agencies of the United States of America came out with their own investigation stating that they found zero evidence of a foreign adversary having anything to do with the symptoms related to the reported Havana syndrome. But I figure in your time, you've worked with people in those agencies. You've had experience with diplomats and international investigations and things like that. And do you think that this is a completely psychological thing? Do you think anyone other than Russia might have anything to do with it? Or do you think it's just something purely made up, some kind of like workers' comp scam?
Well, I'm not a medical professional, and I haven't done the interviews with these people. And even if I did interview them, like I said, I'm not a medical professional, so I'm not qualified to pass medical judgments on people, whether it deals with actual physical maladies or, psychological issues. So I can't really speak to what motivates people to claim a physical injury, because that's what they're talking about. They're talking about debilitating headaches, things of this nature. Normally scams aren't done in the open like this. People don't put themselves out there. So I don't want to insult anybody by implying that the people who claim issues are lying. I'll take them at face value that they are experiencing things of this nature. But again, because I'm not a medical professional, I can't take it to the root cause. The intelligence community, U.S. government, I believe, took these claims seriously and did an investigation. And the investigation did not sustain, because here's what I have a problem with some of these the people who are claiming these injuries, is that they just jump to a conclusion. I mean, now we get into the CIA aspect of it, because I'm not a medical professional. They're not either. They have an issue, and I'm not doubting the fact that they feel this issue, but they jump to the Russians did it without any supporting evidence whatsoever, without any way to back up this claim. It's part of their Russophobic approach. It's part of the fact that when they worked for the CIA, Russia was enemy number one. They're obviously out to get us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the investigation didn't find anything to sustain those allegations. I don't know, somebody, I can't remember what, but crickets can't seem to be the one of the suspects. Who knows? I don't know. I'm not a medical professional. But now 60 Minutes together with Bellingcat have come out with this just absurdity of an investigation that breathes life into this into the notion that Russia did it. It's a stupid report. It's a stupid investigation run by thoroughly discredited news organization and so-called investigative outlet. And it's brought up purely as a political tool. They want to attack Russia at a time when Russia's military victory in Ukraine is becoming more and more obvious, when the world has to step back and say, hey, we've got to, we're not going to beat the Russians. We're not going to defeat the Russians. So we have to learn how to live alongside the Russians. The purpose of a program like this is to say, well, you can never live alongside the Russians. You can never peacefully coexist with them, because these are evil people who have secret spy raids and are trying to fry the brains of American intelligence operatives.
Right, right. And you mentioned that the journalists from the Insider and Bellingcat came out with that their own 6-year investigation, they say. But of course, I seriously doubt that they would have information that the U.S. intelligence agencies wouldn't have, obviously. They basically bring up a lot of circumstantial evidence on their part, where they talk about this Russian unit 29155, that they say members of that unit were, in the area or had contacts with people who were claiming symptoms. But of course, I mean, you can tell me if you think from your own experience that, Russia has a lot of intelligence people and a lot of government officials who work with those intelligence people. And it's kind of like a 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon sort of thing where, someone knows a guy who knows a guy, bumps into a guy from time to time, and you can say, oh, well, that guy a week before he had symptoms, he met with a guy who's connected with this Russian unit that works on, experimental weapons and things like that. And they sort of use that to come to the conclusion of, well, there's evidence that it was the Russians. And when of course we know that's just completely circumstantial. I was actually reading in Psychology Today, interestingly enough, where they talked about how this does kind of have some of the elements of a mass hysteria a little bit, because a lot of the more adamant people who had symptoms who think it was the Russians were people who were specifically working on issues pertaining to Russia. And you think in the intelligence and diplomatic community, with all the Russophobia that's existed over the last 10 years, that some of those people might be perhaps primed to think, oh, there must be a Russian connection, and they're kind of working their way backwards to find evidence for that.
There's no doubt about it. Look, again, I'm not a medical professional, but I have dealt with these people over the course of a lifetime. With no desire to disrespect your average CIA caseworker, a case officer. These are people who live high stress lives. They don't, for the most part, they don't handle the stress well. What I mean by that is they go self-destructive. Many of them are alcoholics. Challenge me. If you're out there and you say, no, I'm not, really, let's pull up your record. Okay, you're an alcoholic. You drink yourself to sleep every night because you do stuff that confuses the living hell out of you. You know that you're a liar. You know that you're a cheater. You know that you're the scum of the earth. You know you've done horrible things in support of a cause that turns out to be corrupt. And so you drink. You drink a lot. And so when you have guys who drink a lot, smoke a lot, live this high stress thing, and they have headaches. No kidding. Welcome to life. They've been having headaches their entire life. To think a Havana syndrome, it's called CIA syndrome. It's called high stress life, not coping with it well syndrome. This is what happens. Wall Street, I'm sure, has a whole bunch of guys out there, traders who have headaches. We can go down the line. A lot of headaches out there, debilitating headaches, because you live a unhealthy lifestyle and you don't cope well with it. And so now you have these guys who have headaches, and one of them, Mark, with a Greek last name, I have to be careful because he used to be able to bench press quite a lot. So if I irritate him too much, he might come after me and bench press me. But he bragged about how much he bench pressed. But he's sort of the high profile face of this. He's the guy that was Russia did it, Russia did it, Russia did it, Russia did it. And now you have a bunch of these case officers who, let's be honest, their track record sucks. Their glory days was in Afghanistan when they could torture people and kill Afghan wedding parties. But now they have to come out in the real world where the Russians are running circles around them, blowing up their networks and everything. They're sort of frustrated in life, and they've got this little group together about Ukraine, and they're all talking about Ukraine and how to take Russia down. And then they all have headaches, and they say Russia did it. There's no doubt in my mind there's an element of mass hysteria here on the part of a disgruntled class of alcoholic CIA case officers.
Right. And as you said, as I'm not a medical professional either, I mean, we can't really discount the symptoms that these people are experiencing. But as you said, I mean, there's any number of causes for any range of symptoms that people can experience. And then, yeah, when they're psychologically primed to see this Russian boogeyman that's been popularized, it's very easy for all these people who might have symptoms that have different causes to all just sort of conclude that they all have the same cause, and that cause is Russia. Which, I mean, the investigators even said that the symptoms list is varied and huge. There's not really any real connection between these cases, other than the people claiming that they had some kind of connection to investigations on Russia or Russian operatives or something like that. And which, again, those are exactly the people who would be primed to sort of suspect a Russian attack on themselves as well.
But we also have to bring out another factor. If anybody's ever done intelligence work and understands what it takes to surveil people, the amount of hours, manpower that goes into this. If you just try to reverse engineer this, basically, in order to give CIA officers headaches, Russia would have had dedicated almost the totality of its, covert overseas surveillance and monitoring capability to give CIA people headaches, because it just doesn't happen by itself. These operations are manpower intensive. They take a lot of planning, a lot of hours to do it right, to avoid, to give CIA guys headaches. This is the stupidity of this. This is the intelligence business. I mean, I give you headaches by doing my job better than you. That's the best way to give you a headache. I give you a headache by breaking into your spy network, rolling it up, reversing some people, doubling back on you, collecting information on you better than you collect on me. That's how I give you a headache. I don't need a secret ray beam to do it. And if I'm taking all my effort, all my time, all my planning and support to give you a headache, I'm not doing my intelligence job. Remember, it's an intelligence agency. The Russians are running intelligence operations. They're supposed to be collecting information, not giving people ray beam headaches. This is the stupidity of the entire thing. I mean, I wish these CIA officers would just shut up and listen to themselves for a minute, what they're saying, because I'd like to throw it back on them. How would you give Russians headache with a secret ray beam? Why don't you come up with an operation, Mark? Okay, Mark, here's your challenge. You say the Russians did it to you. Let's just flip the script. You tell me how you're going to give the Russians headaches. Go. And immediately he's going to say, we can't do it. Can't sustain that operation. It's stupid. Nobody up the chain of command would approve it. Too resource heavy, too much risk, too little gain. No, the best way to give Russians headaches is to be a better intelligence officer than they are, which they're not, which is why they have the hysteria and they're coming out with this. But the idiocy of this concept, this notion, is beyond belief. And that's where I blame 60 Minutes, because 60 Minutes didn't ask just the basic questions. Why would Russia do this? Why? What's in it for Russia? You're eating all these valuable resources. You know what it takes to train a good case officer, a good overseas officer who can do surveillance, who can operate covertly? The amount of time and effort that goes into that, and then you're going to waste it so they can run around with secret ray beams and give CIA officers headaches? It just doesn't make any sense.
Right. And I mean, I guess the question that would seem obvious to me as well is, I mean, do we see them using this kind of technology in the Ukraine? I mean, why haven't people in Kiev succumbed to Havana syndrome en masse? If they really had this technology and this weapon, you think they would be aiming it on the people in Kiev? That would be a prime target.
But why? I mean, again, how do you get it to Kiev? I mean, right. if I'm going to penetrate Kiev with human assets that are capable of bringing a secret ray beam to fry your brain, wouldn't I rather have them go in there and collect intelligence on, what Zelensky's doing? I mean, if I'm that close to the target, why am I giving them a headache? Why am I not just doing spy work? If I'm going to go through all the effort to penetrate deep into Kiev, or Washington, D.C., or anywhere where I'm going to do this crazy laser beam stupidity. Why aren't I just doing my real job? Because again, I'm telling you, it's not that easy to get people overseas in a covered status to operate, underneath the radar of counterintelligence agencies looking for them. So you're going to go through all this effort to do all this stuff to give a guy a headache that he can just pop a couple, Advil and go, well, my headache's temporarily gone. Great. You just spent all this money to give a guy a headache that he can remove it. No, this is just the ludicrous nature of this assertion. But that's basically the problem with Russophobia, is that the hatred of Russia, the ignorance of Russia, the fear of Russia lends itself to this kind of insanity.
Right. And I mean, it was NBC actually said that part of their investigation, the intelligence agencies that were looking into this, is they said that when they monitored the chatter between foreign adversaries, those foreign adversaries were more confused as opposed to like they weren't saying like, oh, they caught us. They were basically saying between each other in leaked conversations, what is this whole Havana syndrome thing even about? This must be some kind of American disinformation campaign. So I think that was probably a big part of why these intelligence agencies came to the conclusion that, they just couldn't find any evidence that there was a foreign adversary involved. Right. Oh, I think some people are having trouble finding the stream. Sorry about that. I don't know if some kind of weird update went through on Telegram. People are saying they can't find the
I will send the
that's
link.
normally at the top. Okay, yeah, thanks, Elena. Right.
Elena, I put it out. I don't know if I'm doing this right. Instead of linking my personal account, I linked through the channel.
It's even better because people don't see your personal account then. It's safer that way.
Well, I mean, if they see my personal account, I was trying to help you guys out and get an audience. But if you wanted to send your link out on the on the chat, maybe more people come in. I don't know. Not the chat.
Well, I saw some people saying they couldn't find the normal green button or whatever that's normally at the top. So I'm not sure what happened there.
Backstory.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
All right. Let me see.
Elena, what's that book in the background? It looks like a very interesting book.
It's Russian version of Scott Ritter's Disarmament in Times of Perestroika, and in Russian it's Гонка разоружения in Russian, because Russians are allergic to word perestroika. And that's a lame word, so better to avoid it. Yeah, and I also have a challenge going here with me. It's like my lucky charm.
Oh, there you go. Well, you're outfitted.
Yeah, as usual.
All right. Sorry for the diversion.
No, all good.
Yeah,
right, Elena.
Yeah, I also had some. Yeah, you want me to ask, or you have something to ask too? Because I have something.
You go ahead and ask the audience question. Yep.
Okay, I will now. I'm doing it for the first time, but I have to do it finally. 1 second. I want to put a question on screen. And yeah, seems like it works. Yeah, perfectly. So this is a question by one of our friends and subscribers, Anna Yurpalova. It's a long question, and it is connected to Crocus City Hall terrorist attack. And the first reaction of the West was voiced by Mr. Kirby, and the first thing he said was, we know for sure that it wasn't Ukraine. And later in the media and social networks, the narrative spread that it is not Ukraine, but Russia will find a way to blame the Ukraine. But then later, as head of SBU, Mavlyuk confessed to the journalist that his organization was involved in the explosion of the Crimean Bridge and in terrorist attacks in St. Petersburg, where Vladlen Tatarsky died, and so on. And even murder of Ilya Kiva is also like on the SBU account. And at the same day, the British Minister of Defense said that Russia shows recklessness, nuclear rhetoric. So it is clear that Ukraine confessing, yes, we did this, this, and this. On the other hand, like West comes out and says, well, Russia is aggressive and so on. And the question, honest question was like this. Could it be a trap for Russia when, say, under the guise of angry statements by Russians, Western intelligence agencies carry out an operation like a false flag attack in the Ukraine, like involving a chemical or nuclear attack, and say that it was revenge by Russian? And in addition to this, we see that evacuation of Kharkov could be which could be ideal place for such a provocation. And we also see the initiative of 44 countries of the EU and the United States to hold a tribunal against Putin, which was announced on April 2 at conference on Netherlands. So on the one hand, Ukraine makes Russia angry. Russia, of course, replies that we will not leave this unanswered. On the other hand, like West and the Ukraine start shouting, oh, Russia will start blaming us, and now we fear of some Russian provocations. Could such false flag operation be possible? What do you think?
Well, I mean, the premise of the false flag is that they're going to do something and blame it on Russia. What was the Russian response to not one, but two attacks on the Kerch Bridge? Did they use nuclear weapons? Did they use chemical weapons? No. What was the Russian response to any of these provocations that have taken place? To say we will hold the perpetrators accountable, but then to get on with, what they've been doing the whole time, winning a war. So the idea that Russia's past behavior lends itself to accusations of nuclear weapon use or chemical weapons use is absurd. Russia's made it clear that they will never use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. I mean, if they're going to use nuclear weapons, it won't be a Ukrainian city that gets blown up. It'll be a European city that gets blown up. And chemical weapons, it's not part of the Russian arsenal. So, and here's the other thing too. Both a nuclear and a chemical incident, forensically, it's a piece of cake to deconstruct it and show where it came from. You'll find now. I'm sure people say, well, here's the clever part of the false flag. So the Russians did a nuclear event that used isotopes traceable back to Ukraine, but Russia did that on purpose to finger Ukraine in the Ukrainian false flag designed to finger the Russians. Now we're getting into conspiratorial Russia I don't think Russia's losing too much sleep on that. I mean, there's always the PR game, the information war game where people can throw these things back and forth. But I just don't think that Vladimir Putin wakes up every morning going, oh my God, the Ukrainian false flag. We got to worry about that. And I don't think the Russian intelligence, I think they're worried about bigger picture things like finishing this conflict in Ukraine and how to get on with, a new European security framework, how to, slow down an arms race with the United States, how, what's going to happen in Iran, what's going to happen with China, how do we improve our relations, North Korea, all these things. I just don't think that, the false. Now, this doesn't mean that the Ukrainians aren't insane. We know they are. We know the Ukrainians they fund a terrorist attack against the Crocus City Hall. That's insanity. They attacked the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. That's insanity. So we know the Ukrainians are insane, but the idea that the West is going to collude with Ukrainian insanity to create a false flag that justifies NATO intervention, I don't see that as a reality.
Yeah, and speaking about Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, there have been attacks recently again, and frankly speaking, I don't understand what Ukraine is trying to achieve there, because it's absolutely illogical to target. If they claim that Zaporozhye is their territory, And those territories which are now part of Russian Federation and including Crimea, Ukraine claims those territories to be their territories. Why would they put all that region at risk? Because it's a serious risk of nuclear contamination if something happens there. Of course, they cannot hit the reactor itself, and the reactor is like cooled down now, but there is still a storehouse of toxic waste, and there is like another facilities around which could contaminate the area and pose a major threat to ecology, not only in the Ukraine. Say, here is the map from Russian mod, and it's from the last year. But if you look in the lower left corner, there is like possibilities how that radiational contamination may spread, and it can even reach Berlin and Warsaw, and that wind might even go to Scandinavia and to Russian north and to Scandinavian north. So it is like I see it as a very big threat, and it can be something like of a scale of Chernobyl maybe if something happens there. So why would Ukrainians attack such a facility? Is it a suicide, or what could it be, and who could be behind that?
Well, I mean, it's clearly a strategy that's been in the work some time in the Zelensky government. The goal isn't, I believe, to get that kind of outcome. The goal is to create the perception that that kind of outcome is a possibility, and therefore have the International Atomic Energy Agency say we need to bring this under control, international control. And, you go back to the game plan that Ukraine's been pushing since 2022 to get international peacekeepers deployed on the soil to remove the territory around there from Russian control. And now you've created a precedent of international troops deploying, into Ukraine. That's something the Ukrainians would hope to then, grow upon to bring it into this conflict. It's their only chance of survival. So that's their goal. I don't think their goal is actually to create, a ecological, catastrophe. Their goal is to plant in the minds of people the potential of such a catastrophe, and hope that gets the international community so concerned that they will impose their will on Russia. But there's nobody imposing their will on Russia right now. I mean, not in Ukraine. Russia's not losing. They're very strong. They're very confident. I mean, the statements of the Russian ambassador at the UN the other day should have been a shot of ice cold water on people, where he said that the world needs to prepare for the only outcome of this conflict being unconditional surrender of Ukraine. And so, the Ukrainians are looking at that. I'm seeing headlines today out of Kiev where everybody's just saying it's getting really, really bad on the front line. It's getting bad then politically, economically in Ukraine, that they can't hold out much longer. They have no means to defend themselves. And so as the situation becomes more and more dire for the Ukrainians, I think you're going to see them promote more and more extreme, actions designed to engender, NATO intervention. So, the problem is Ukraine is governed by people who long ago gave up caring about Ukraine. I mean, how can you call, they turned their back on the Istanbul communique. If they had embraced that, they'd have Kherson, they'd have Zaporozhye, they'd have a referendum about the Donbass, they'd have political dialogue about, Ukrainian connectivity with Crimea, and 500,000 men would be alive. Tens of millions of people wouldn't be displaced. $1 trillion worth of infrastructure wouldn't have been destroyed. But they opted not to do that, and now they're paying the price.
Yeah, that is true. Zen, maybe you have other questions.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I lost internet connection a few minutes ago, but I'm back now. So wonderful. I don't know. It's a glitch heavy day. But so the spending bill for general defense is sort of still being debated in Congress. The House reconvened on the 9th of April. And so far, there's discussion that the Speaker of the House is going to push his own version of a defense bill for Ukraine, Israel, and other things. But right now, the bill that's kind of on the table that they really want to push is the Senate package that was passed a couple of months ago. And in that package, there's a $60 billion bill of aid for Ukraine. $14 billion of that is actually going to go towards rearmament. And I wanted to ask you, what difference do you think that will make for the Ukrainians on the battlefield? Do you think the $14 billion is really going to make a substantial difference in their defense?
No. I mean, that's look, we gave Ukraine a $45 billion Lend-Lease package when, back in May of 2022. That enabled Ukraine to rebuild a military that had been effectively destroyed by Russia in the first month of the fight. That rebuilt military was destroyed. We gave Ukraine tens of billions more dollars so they could rebuild their military for this vaunted counteroffensive. That military has been destroyed. We don't have any money. We didn't give them another large tranche, and so they've taken a military that was destroyed and it's been bled down to near zero. And so even if this 14 billion manifested itself instantaneously in the form of tanks, armored fighting vehicles, artillery shells, etc., it's 14 billion. It's not enough. And the timelines associated with getting this, flowing this in, the situation's changed. Back when we gave Ukraine Lend-Lease, Ukraine had an integrated air defense system that was being bolstered with, Patriots, Iris-Ts, NASAMs, things of that nature. And so the Russian ability to interdict the logistics that were flowing in to get this stuff to the Ukrainian army was limited. That air defense umbrella is gone. And so right now, if you're going to start flowing stuff in, it's going to get interdicted sooner with greater accuracy. And so it's going to get bled off before it even gets to the front line. So no, this isn't going to have any impact. This is what it will do is politically raise the morale of the Ukrainian government, and maybe that transfers into increasing the fighting spirit. Because right now on the front lines, from what I'm being told, the Ukrainian soldiers are becoming very depressed because without the Western aid, there's no hope of victory. There's no hope of, why are they fighting? Why are they dying? I mean, it's becoming literally a lost cause. They no longer believe in the potential of victory. And when you have troops that are infected with that mindset, it impacts, how they perform on the battlefield. And so, this could help, stiffen the backbone, so to speak, the will to resist on the part of the Ukrainian soldiers. But it doesn't change the reality of the battlefield. The Russians will still kill them and continue to advance. So no, I don't see, this infusion of capital turning anything around. It could result in, more dead Russians if these weapons make it to the front line and are used. I mean, these are modern weapons, they're lethal, etc. But it's also going to result in far more dead Ukrainians. And Russia, I think everybody has, even the United States now has recognized that Russia has successfully turned the corner on the issue of combat attrition. They are growing, not shrinking. The Ukrainians, on the other hand, are shrinking with very little potential to grow, and that's a balance of power, equation that's not going to be altered by an injection of $14 billion into Ukrainian defense.
Zin, unmute yourself, please.
Yep. So they say that the F-16s are supposedly on their way as well. So if they get this package and they get, the F-16s, I mean, do you even think that they're going to get the F-16s? Is it something that it's been delayed a couple of times already? They've explained that by saying they're trying to upgrade them to the latest radar systems. and that's kind of what they're hoping the delay is about. But I mean, do you think that they're going to get these F-16s anytime? And if they do, will they be in substantial numbers to make any kind of difference on the battlefield either?
The problem is the F-16s need to operate from an airbase. Where are they going to operate? Again, Russia now has changed the nature of this conflict. There's no safe airfields. Every airfield is now exposed to Russian attack, and so I think the Russians are tracking the F-16s, looking for any evidence of F-16 arrival, and then they'll seek to interdict it as quickly as possible. So I don't see the F-16, having a long lifespan just by deploying to Ukraine. You increase that. That's before it even takes off and starts flying missions against the Russians. These airframes give them this radar that they're talking about, upgrading the radar and all that stuff, but it's an old airframe. They're not getting brand new airframes. They're getting airframe. The reason why people are giving Ukraine F-16s, or at least pretending to, is that they've outlived their operational utility for the air forces that had originally bought them, meaning that that Air Force says we can't fly them anymore because they're going to fall apart. And so, let's give them to the Ukrainians because that's what the Ukrainians need. Old broken airplane that's already difficult to maintain. And now, you're going to put it into an environment where they lack the maintenance, infrastructure to keep the airframes operating. And they lack the training. These pilots may have received some training, but they're not trained pilots in this area. And they lack the support network. Are they going to be plugged into NATO AWACS? Who's going to be vectoring them? Who's going to be talking to them? Or are they just going to take off and sort of, fly to a point in the sky and pray? Where are they getting their targeting information? And once you have F-16s talking to NATO satellites that are talking to, NATO ground control or airborne control, that satellite now becomes a legitimate target of the Russians. So I just don't see any scenario where the F-16s survive or have any meaningful impact on the battlefield. I see plenty of opportunity for Russian pilots to earn heroism awards for shooting down F-16s. I see a future full of new Russian aces, but I don't see anything that says these F-16s have a meaningful impact on the battlefield.
So, and a minute ago, you were talking about the morale situation for soldiers on the front in the Ukraine. So I'm kind of curious because I see the propaganda here in the Western world. I've spent some time on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it today. There seems to be a lot of people who are pretty confident about the Ukrainians and their chances on the battlefield. There's a lot of accounts that spend all day basically posting, videos of Russians getting killed, Russian equipment getting destroyed. And they almost present this kind of, alternate reality from what we know, where, the Russians are just losing, wave after wave of men, and that the only reason they're doing as well as they are is because they're just, willing to incur just incredible losses. And I wonder, for the soldier on the battlefield, how much information do they get from the outside, and are they able to kind of keep the soldiers, maybe not necessarily the ones on the front line who are seeing how hard it really is, but maybe the ones that are in reserve that are about to be rotated in, they kind of keep them in a little bit of an information cocoon, or only expose them to the kind of information that I'm seeing on, Twitter, that maybe keeps them still believing, still in a position where they think they can still win the fight. For soldiers who are actually in that position, how much information would actually get to them to actually let them know what's really going on?
Well, I can't speak to Ukrainian soldiers. I haven't interfaced with them. I'll just speak about military professionals or military members. When you're preparing for an operation mission, you don't really give a damn what's on TV or the radio or the internet. You don't have time. It's not your focus. You learned a long time ago that if the best way to stay alive is to stay focused on the mission and not get distracted by peripheral things. The whether you've prepared, whether you have the logistical sustainability, where you made the right phone calls, have you tied in with the unit on your left, the unit on your right, have you shared locations, do you have a fire support plan? These are the things that you're focused on. Not, what did Scott Ritter tweet on X? They don't care. They're not reading this. And if they are, then somebody needs to come in and slap them around and say, stay focused on the mission. So the information war that's being waged there, I don't believe bleeds down to the troops. Now, when troops are removed and they get back into the rear area and they can, to rest and refit, then I think, they do, escape from the reality of the battlefield to see, what's going on in the home front. And it's always a good thing to be able to plug into friendly information sources to feel good about what you're doing. And but here's the other thing. Okay, so you're a Ukrainian soldier that went to the front line with 100 guys. 3 days later, you rotated out and only 20 of your guys are left alive. You saw everybody else get blown apart. You know that you abandoned, you're dead. You know that your equipment didn't work. You know that when you called in for support, it didn't come. You know that the Russian Air Force is dominated. You know all this. And now you come back and you open up your Twitter account and you got Ilya Pomerenko saying, posting a video of, dead Russians going, we're winning. And the guy's going to go, what the hell are you talking about? We're not winning. I just came to the front line. We're losing. And you spreading this garbage, it has the opposite effect. So I think all of these feel-good accounts, when viewed by soldiers who know the reality, it doesn't boost their reality. Soldiers are pretty straightforward people. It's very simple. You're either dead or you're not. And if you're not, you reflect on why you're not. Was it because you got lucky, or was it because you're good? And so they know the truth. They don't. This is what you're seeing on social media is all about. Again, look, I'm considered to be a Russian troll, a Putin bot, whatever. And I know for a fact that a lot of Russian soldiers claim that they enjoy my commentary, but they enjoy it when they're in the rear with the gear resting. I don't think any Russian soldiers are on the front line waking up every morning going, what did Scott Ritter tweet about Russia today? How did my friend Scott Ritter say good things about this? Because they'll be dead. They'll be dead because they'll be doing the wrong thing, and then the Ukrainians who are still lethal will kill them. I think the Russian soldiers on the front line are solely focused on the mission in front of them. They don't let any of this other garbage get in their head. And I think the Ukrainians are the same way.
Right. So basically all that stuff is more for people on the outside and sort of an advertising campaign for things like, drumming up more funding for the Ukraine, for Kiev, to continue basically just pushing more and more Ukrainians to the front line.
Because when I write, I don't write with a Russian soldier in mind. I don't write with the Russian government in mind, because I don't think the Russian government gives a damn what I say or not either. I mean, they may go, oh, interesting, but they deal with reality. I write to try and inform a Western audience about, the reality of what's going on, so that they, empowered with, with knowledge and information, can hold their elected representatives accountable for what's going on. Is this good policy? Is this a good thing for America to be pursuing? That's the audience I write for. But I'm very happy that a Russian audience, likes what I write. I mean, that's nice, but I'm not writing to make Russians happy. I'm sorry for all the Russians out there. I'm just telling you the truth. I'm not writing to make you happy. And I hope you're not reading me to become happy, because I'm not Russian. I'm an American. I'm writing primarily to educate an American audience or a Western audience about, a failure of policy. So we got to keep this in perspective. Sometimes people start to think too highly of themselves. I think this is a problem with social media, that you begin to think that you're far more influential than you are, and you're far more important than you are, and that your opinions count for far more than they do. I'm very grounded. I know who I'm writing for, and I know what I'm trying to accomplish. I think sometimes, however, on especially X, it becomes, a very ego-driven thing where, my tweet is going to change the world. I'm going to tweet something now, and I'm going to ratio the hell out of this person, and I'm going to do this. And the next thing I know, Zelensky's going to be reading my tweet saying, I'm changing everything I'm doing because Scott Ritter had a hell of a tweet on X. It doesn't work that way, but people believe they do. Every once in a while, you got to, that's just why I enjoy going to Russia, because it's like a dose of reality, to get away from the insanity of, social media. And look, I love alternative media. I love that's why I'm here. I think things like this are great, but alternative media, because it's very, it piggybacks on social media. It piggybacks on that phenomenon. That's how you get your viewership, et cetera. It has a tendency to allow itself to be the seriousness of it to be diluted by too many voices that in mainstream media wouldn't make it through the filter. And so there's a lot of people saying things, et cetera, and you're putting their ideas out there and everybody's reading them, and it creates a product that it becomes more difficult to find the wheat because it's covered with chaff. It's and to fight in it on a daily basis. Look, I'm as guilty as anybody. I wake up in the morning, I turn on my X account, and the next thing you know, I'm engaged in a Twitter war. Probably not the wisest use of my time, but what the hell? It's fun. It's the morning. My dog's sitting on my lap, and I do it. But if I took that 2.5 hours of hooking and jabbing on Twitter, and instead sat down and do what I'm supposed to do, is crank out the article for a serious audience that is going to earn me an income, that's probably a better use of my time. But the thing you have to realize is, in this alternative media universe, I need that Twitter audience. I need that Twitter audience to be engaged. And so I have to engage with that Twitter audience. And so I have to engage with them in a way that Twitter facilitates. So it breaks things down into 240 character things, but now we can expand it because you got the blue check mark and all that kind of stuff. All this stuff. But I do the same thing on Telegram. I'm not as good on Telegram. Fortunately, I have people like Elena who help me out and make it better, and others who help turn my ignorance about social media into something that looks more but the point is, because this is alternative media, because it's social media driven, we have to change the way we operate to deal with this new reality. You can't sit there and say, I'm too good to be in a Twitter war. Because if I'm too good to be in a Twitter war, then I won't have a Twitter following. If I don't have a Twitter following, then what the hell am I doing on Twitter or X? It's the same thing, Facebook. If I'm not posting, I opened up a VKontakte account, and I haven't been posting on it. But what I hear is I'm missing out on a great opportunity, because VKontakte is a big community that, if it's managed properly, could bring even more viewership. And what's important about viewership is, why are we doing this? If you're trying to change public opinion, public attitude, you need viewership. And so you got to play the game. You got to go out there and you got to do this. It gets confusing after a while, and you get caught up in look, secretly, we're all a bunch of egomaniacs and narcissists. Okay. We don't want to be, we may say we're not, but we are. We all want bigger followership. We all want the great tweet. We all want this. And we like it when people like our tweets. It's like, I'm not on Instagram, but my daughters are. And I know when they put a photograph out there or something like that, if they don't get the requisite number of likes, it's a crushing moment in their life. And I'm like, who cares? No, they care, because to them, that's the standard that's been put out there. You put a photo and you need to get instant likes from people, or there's something wrong with that photo, which means there's something wrong with you. And so it's the same thing. If I put a tweet out there and nobody likes it, I'm like, what's wrong with me? Did I do am I a bad person? And so it's good to actually unplug from that and get out in reality and just sit down with people and meet people, real people, and talk to them. And I enjoy doing that in Russia. I enjoy doing it here in the United States. It's a great pleasure to get out and realize that there's a real world out there that doesn't revolve around the insanity of social media. But I'm not denigrating, because, as I mentioned, without social media, we don't have alternative media. Without alternative media, we yield the battlefield to mainstream media. So it's a brave new world out there that I think we're all trying to navigate.
Right. And yeah, I appreciate you bringing up the issue with the sort of social media battlefield. And something that kind of worries me about basically what we're trying to do is, we're trying to reach people and change minds, and you're trying to reach people and change minds. But then sometimes, especially with alternative media, and if you're especially expressing a not so popular point of view, you can run into this issue of attracting the cranks, the ne'er-do-wells, people who are kind of the misfits of society. And granted, I don't know everything about every politician or so I might offend someone when like Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm not a huge fan of. She seems like she's absolutely insane to me, but she also says a lot of things that are good. And it's sort of like, is she saying those things because she's just a permanent skeptic of main institutions, or does she actually really know more about things than other people, or some combination of both? And does that help us if we're ever associated with someone who has that negative stigma of being kind of a crank, kind of outside of the norm, prone to, conspiracy theory, things like that? And that makes it hard to affect any kind of change when you attract too many cranks and weirdos and people who don't have the best reputation, which, I mean, then again, of course, reputations can be just smear campaigns as well. So, I wouldn't necessarily say someone has a bad reputation is just inherently bad, but I mean, do you sort of have that same fear and contend with that and worry about, how do you change people's minds when you're holding an opinion that isn't the mainstream opinion? And how do you avoid just accumulating wasters and strays?
No, I mean, this is one of the fundamental questions, especially, now I'm going to get into a topic that nobody really likes to talk about on, because you hear everybody go, hit the like buttons, hit this button, why? Why do you want them to hit the like buttons? Are you trying to monetize your account? And that's okay, but nobody talks about it. We all pretend that we're not, or, money doesn't mean anything. Money means everything. That's how you make a living. That's how you pay your bills. And so when you factor in monetization, the need to earn an income, because again, we're not mainstream media. We don't have GE writing the big paycheck every day. For channels like yours and mine and others to stay on, we need to not only attract viewership, but we have to manage the account in a way that attracts enough monetary resources to make this sustainable. Because if you can't sustain it, it gets shut down. So now you're running into, a whole bunch of problems, because if, for instance, on YouTube, I mean, I'll just be straight up. I had got my YouTube account to a point where it had the potential of making $80,000 to $100,000 a year. That's not millions, but I don't know about you, but that pays bills. And then YouTube demonetized me and banned me because my message was inconvenient or whatever. And there's people out there where this would be devastating. Fortunately, I write, if I ever stop Twitter wars and get back to writing articles that generate income, so I don't have to worry about that. But if my business model was contingent upon YouTube, it being monetized on YouTube. And I've shaped my the way I operate such that I've built up this following that allows monetization. Then I lose it all. I mean, that's a crushing blow, and that's happened to a lot of people, and that's a problem. And so there's organizations out there or networks that are designed to collapse the monetization capability of channels they don't like. NAFO has an entire this North Atlantic Fellows organization. They have an entire attack model, which is based upon just simply flooding the system with complaints, etc., and so that the algorithm kicks you up as a problem and the system shuts you down automatically. They're masters at that. And so when you take on certain topics that people don't like, they come at you hard, and then that now pollutes your following, so that you don't have a clean feed anymore. Because now, if you put something out there, people have to navigate through, just scads of garbage and crap and smear and everything to get to whatever substance there may be out there. I mean, this is all problematic, but you can't look. The business model is this. Let's talk about two successful business models in alternative media: Tucker Carlson and Jackson Hinkle. We can even talk about Alex Jones, who's and again, I'm not saying anything about their messaging and all that. All I'm saying is that their approach has been the way you push through the nonsense that we just talked about that can take down is to go big, get so big that it doesn't matter, that the naysayers, the haters out there get drowned out by the other volume of people who want to follow you. And that's sort of a good place to be. But how do you get that big? What compromises did you have to make to get that big? Or what things did you have to do? I mean, I'm not picking on Jackson Hinkle, very successful model. And I like Jackson. I mean, I've met him. I think he's a great guy. But Jackson is a very heavy self-promoter, And he goes out there and he does things. He promotes himself in a way that I, for instance, would be extraordinarily uncomfortable promoting myself that way. It works for him. It wouldn't work for me. Tucker had the benefit of coming off of Fox and able to build up on that. But, he went big real quick. And then he got in with X, with Elon. He got the interview with Putin. Big platform. Alex Jones just has a huge platform to begin with. How do we all get? I mean, we'd all love to have that problem. Oh gosh, I woke up this morning. I've got 20 million followers. 5 million who are willing to pay $2 a month to listen to me. $10 million a month income stream coming in. Wouldn't we all love to have that problem? So. But that's everybody's goal and objective. But how do you get there? How do you do it? And how do you maintain integrity? How do you maintain consistency, et cetera? And I have to say, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm unsuccessful, but when I look at my numbers compared to other people, I don't have numbers like these other people. I'm pretty proud of the product I put out. It's difficult though. What emphasis do you place on marketing or on quality control? On making sure that, I tend to spend most of my time trying to read up on things and sit down and analyze it so that when I answer questions, at least comes from a place of, a little bit of informed speculation, because we're all speculating. We're all sitting on our butts thousands of miles removed from the real target. We don't have real knowledge. I wasn't at the front line yesterday. So I have to read what other people write. Then I have to put on bias filters, take that out, put my own template on, see how things work out. But I think it works. I think at the end of the day, I put out analysis that is fact-based, and I have a fairly good track record over time. Not perfect, but a fairly good track record over time, trying to do predictive analysis. So I'm proud of the product, but the product maybe isn't a product that is conducive to bring in the numbers necessary to build a business model that can rival Tucker Carlson, Jackson Hinkle, or Alex Jones. It's a problem. But getting back to your question, how do you filter out the crazies? I think if you get involved in filtering too soon, you'll never build a base. Basically what you have to do, I believe, is have an absolute open door policy, to bring everybody in and hope that the quality of your product has a self-filtering aspect to it, meaning that you'll attract a better audience, so that the naysayers and the ill wishers become a minority member of a community, and when they find out that they can't change you, if they can't put you off track, then they withdraw, and you end up with a better community. So I'm a big fan of just saying anybody and everybody. And the other thing is, I have no problem with liking an idea, meaning that if you put out a tweet that makes sense, I like it. I'll repost it. But that doesn't mean that I'm in love with you or I automatically support other things that are out there. It's about ideas. It's about the battle of ideas, and you have to be comfortable enough with your own filter. Now, again, I wouldn't go liking Adolf live today and tweeting. I may not want to follow Adolf Hitler, but Marjorie Taylor Greene, you don't have to agree with her thing, but when she picks a battle and she starts saying the right things in that battle, have confidence enough that your followers will understand that that's why you're liking that tweet, not because of her stance on this, that, or the other thing. It's because on this particular issue, she might be saying something that's the right thing to say. And I think if you allow yourself to have that kind of open mind and have confidence in who you are, so that you don't allow yourself, because it's a fairly it's a person that lacks confidence who gets worried about what other people think on issues of importance. If you're sitting there going, what are they going to say if I do this? Then you're not very confident. You don't have confidence in your messaging. But if you have confidence in your messaging, and that's the thing about the social media, is that exude that confidence. Go out there, be confident, be accurate, but be confident. And I think that will attract more people than playing it safe and trying to only have the right thinking people around you. You have a very small audience if that's your approach.
Right. And I mean, I'm not so much concerned about myself looking bad. I mean, I'm not even really out there. But I would say more for the ideas in general, being associated with certain controversial, let's say, figures or whatever. But I think what you said, it's the same idea. If you have to have confidence in your own ideas, or the idea or the movement or whatever you want to call it, that basically a few hangers on aren't going to spoil the whole thing. Like I said, I don't know. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, the way this works, I think that this is my approach. Again, I'm not an expert on this, but for instance, I was surprised to find that
Hello? Scott, we have sound issues. Scott, please unmute yourself. You are not audible. Hello?
There we go. Back?
Yeah, you're back now.
I had a phone call coming in, so that disrupted the thing. I'm just saying that, I was surprised to find that I had 310,000 followers on X the other day. That's for me, that's an amazing thing. But I'm certain a certain number of them are bots. They have things like nudes in bio, kind of things. But yay! And I'm also certain that many of them just hate me, and they're following me to hate me so that they can hate respond on that stuff. But what I'm saying, let's talk about let's say that 70% of them are legitimate followers. I can guarantee you they come from diverse groups. That's not a it's not a homogeneous group. I know that I follow some controversial people. Alex Jones. I know that I have Alex Jones followers. I know that I have followers from the the black community that probably don't like Alex Jones, but they follow me. I have followers from Ryan Dawson. I have followers from left wing. I have followers from the right wing. Why? Because I follow them. Is sort of, how do you learn? You don't learn by shutting down avenues of information. You learn by absorbing information and having confidence in your bias filters, confidence in your own quality control. But in Alex Jones, I don't have every Alex Jones follower, but I might have some Alex Jones followers who listen to me on his program and like what I said about nuclear disarmament and the need to prevent a nuclear war. That doesn't mean we agree on everything. It just means on this issue, we agree. I have a lot of followers now in the Palestinian community. I may have lost a lot of followers in the Israeli community. I probably don't have too many followers in the Ukrainian community. I have a lot of followers in the Russian community. But the point is, it's a very diverse community there. And I only have them because I had the courage to reach out and connect with people that people would have otherwise said, yeah, you don't want, Alex Jones. I've met him. I like Alex Jones. I think he's a very intelligent guy. I don't agree with everything he says. I'm sure he doesn't agree with everything I say, but we at least respect our respective rights to say it, and we need to protect each other's right to say it. That's what this is all about. This is about free speech. And so we should all be supporting each other, not because we agree with each other, but that we agree on the principle of free speech. And that if we're going to have an effective alternative media community, we have to understand that there is a need for disagreement. Informed debate, discussion, and dialogue is the thing that makes any society better, stronger. And so I think shutting people out because of controversial points of view, et cetera, I think it's a little unhealthy because you know what? At some point in time, they're going to say that we're controversial points of view and that we should be shut out. And that's the last thing we need if we're trying to build a following that makes the continuation of our efforts viable. So I'm a big fan of opening the door and letting those who want to come in and being open to hear everything. We know what hate speech is. We know what hate speech is. You know it when you see it. And if you see it, yeah, I have no problem when you see hate speech shutting it down, blocking it, filtering it. But disagreement isn't hate speech. I know sometimes in this emotionally driven world, we view it as hate speech, but the fact that somebody disagrees with me is not a reason to block them. It's actually a better reason to engage with them, to find out why they disagree with me and see if we can have a healthy dialogue about it and maybe learn. I can tell you what, all the people on X and Telegram and all that who disagree with me, who engage with me constructively, I learn from, because I don't claim to be the end all of everything. I operate off of my information base, which is admittedly incomplete in many areas. And if somebody wants to take the time to engage with me responsibly, they teach me things. And then my argument gets better, it gets stronger. And I'd like to believe that I can teach them some things and their argument gets better and stronger. We can still disagree with one another, but that's healthy. That's healthy. If this was all just a bunch of, yes nodders, just blindly following, what a boring world we live in. We need that disagreement so we can get to the truth. We can get to a better understanding so we can have the right answers by defining the right problems. But it has to be done responsibly. But you're not going to have that disagreement if all you do is surround yourself with like thinkers and people who support you. I like the idea of supporters. Everybody likes the idea of supporters. And I like the idea of followers. Everybody likes that. But what does that imply? Blind allegiance? No, man. If you follow me, if you support me, and you disagree with me, it's your duty and responsibility to tell me, because otherwise you're just a strap hanger. You don't bring anything to this except a number. I'm not so much in the numbers game. I'm in the quality game. And quality means that you can say, hey, I like your ideas. I like the direction you're heading, but I have a problem with this, that, and the other thing. And I learned from that.
Mm-hmm. Right. And yeah, I will say that my time on X has been, I'm more exposed to people who think differently than me. Telegram is a little bit more segregated between communities. Like I've done live streams and things like that where I've been waiting for maybe like someone who's pro-Ukrainian to jump in and argue. Doesn't really happen. I mean, I've had a couple of trolls jump in the time that I've done this, but that's it. No one actually trying to come in and say, I disagree with you because of X, Y, or Z. Maybe one in like a year of doing it. But yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you. That was, pretty frank explanation of what it's like to sort of be working in alternative media. You mentioned the whole monetary aspect. You always get people who want to push back and say like, if you're doing things for money, then it's inherently bad, and that you're supposed to be doing it for the love of it or something like that. And I mean, like you said, at the end of the day, it's income that's going to power people's ability to keep working in this regard. And, frankly, I don't understand how people can think that way, that, you can just keep putting out the kind of, work that you and others put out without having some kind of ability to feed your families, I mean, like, us, we're not monetized in any way at the moment. And, we all have day jobs, and I can tell you that it's a struggle to really get anything done when everybody has their day job and you're trying to coordinate multiple different people's careers and jobs to sort of arrange a time for anything. And believe me, it's definitely having an income stream that allows people to do things like what you do, channels that can put out, advanced, map programs and things like that. I mean, that's all something that takes forever, It
takes money and it takes people. Look, when I started this, I'm a writer. That's how I primarily earn money. And I have to say that, I tried to find a balance, to do podcasts, to appear on people out of the good of my heart, out of, the purity of the vision and all that kind of stuff. But then more and more demand comes out, for more demand for your time. And, there was a period of time where, I was doing 18-hour days for weeks at a time. And it's unsustainable. And so you had to make a decision. Do I stop doing the podcasts? Do I stop doing the alternative media? Do I focus solely on writing? Or do I cut back on writing and put more time in this? But, in order to cut back on writing, then you have to have an income stream. And fortunately, I have a good partner in Jeff Norman who understands the reality of the social media world better. And we've been able to come up with a modest, anybody who thinks that we're raking in money, please contribute more so we can. But we make enough now that I can justify the time that I put in. But it's still a struggle because, the majority of my income comes in from writing. And I can tell you this past week, I'm 3 articles short. And that, I don't want to get in too much in what an article generates, but it's $1,000 that I lost because of this. Now people go 1,000. I don't, again, like I said, for me, $1,000 a lot of money. You pay some serious bills with that. And if I have 4 weeks of fumbling on my writing, that's $4,000. That's a month's income gone because I was doing things on social media that may not be bringing in money. Definitely not at that rate. So, monetization is very important. And I think people out there who support this understand that, need to understand that, if you like a product that's out there, support the product because it helps that product get better. And it helps the people who are producing that product stay engaged. The product goes down if I've looked back on some of my podcasts where I've shown up tired, exhausted, and I guess some people get entertained when I lose my temper or something like that. They like it. But it's not the most professional thing in the world. But if you see me losing my temper, it's probably because I've just put in consecutive 18-hour days, and my eyes are red and bloodshot, and I'm exhausted, and I have very low patience and things of that nature. That's probably not the best, business model. Or it might be a good business model, but it's not. Professional would be for me to come in rolling in with about an 8 hours sleep, where I could spend a couple hours preparing for the podcast so that I have all the information right at my fingertips. And then when people ask me questions, I respond in a calm, professional demeanor. That would be perfect. But there's people out there who do that, but they make a lot of money. They either are independently wealthy or they're getting into money that allows them to do that. It's a tough thing. That the alternative media business model is an extraordinarily difficult one. Right. And I hope you guys are able to cross that threshold and make it sustainable and succeed. But it isn't going to happen unless the people that are watching you hit whatever contribution button that you guys put in there, because there's no corporation that I know of out there right now writing big paychecks to people like us.
Oh yeah, if we haven't had a Putin check in weeks, I'll tell you that.
Well, at least you can say weeks. I've been accused of taking Putin's money for a long time. I'm telling you what, whatever bank account it's accruing in, I need to find out. That would be one hell of a payday if it ever finally showed up.
He's one stingy guy, I tell you.
Yeah.
Shoot. But excuse me.
Well, I was accused of being pro-Putin troll since 2013, so he owes me a lot of money already. I have to show up for Kremlin to get a paycheck after all someday.
Big line of people pounding on that door, but yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of time, I definitely appreciate the time you've given us. I mean, do you want to answer maybe a couple more questions? Or
I'll answer a couple questions, then I got to get on with my day.
Right on.
Yeah.
So one interesting thing recently about the situation in Israel, obviously they recently attacked that Iranian consulate, and that everyone's expecting Iran to retaliate, but it seems like Iran's been delaying their retaliation for a while now. I heard one theory, someone was saying that basically Iran and Russia are sort of matching their timetables because they understand that they're facing the same enemy essentially in sort of this hegemonic threat, and that perhaps Iran is waiting for Russia to launch its own, greatest offensive in the north of the Ukraine, and then Iran will make a move on Israel when that happens, and that way maybe the hegemon will have too many plates spinning to really know what's going on.
I view these as two totally different problem sets and totally different solution paths. First of all, Russia's already pounding the living dog poop out of Ukraine. So what's Iran waiting for? How much more does Russia have to do? And the Russians have never been artificially, calendar driven. They are outcome driven. So they will launch their attacks and they will design their attacks based upon their needs that are driven by the reality in Ukraine, not on the reality anywhere else. The Iranians, I think where the Russians and the Iranians and the Chinese and the Russians and the Chinese are focused on is, there's this game-changing event taking place in October, which is the BRICS summit. Russia's hosting it in Kazan. And, Russia, they're talking about expanding BRICS. We're talking about, the transition from, an American singularity to the genuine multipolarity that's going to require institutions to be established and built, and connectivity and agreement and all this stuff. And an Iranian war with Israel that throws this all away. I mean, it could lead to fracturing between Iran and two new BRICS members, Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. That disrupts this transition. So I think, and the other thing is Iran's already beating Israel. I mean, they're already winning. Israel's losing. Iran needs to reestablish deterrence, credible deterrence. And deterrence is only achieved when a party understands that the consequences for them doing something are going to be greater than what they're going to achieve by doing it. So you're deterred from doing that. Israel attacked Iranian sovereign territory, a consulate in Damascus. Israel operated under the assumption that Iran would either not retaliate or that the retaliation would be smaller than what Israel did to Iran, which was significant, disrupting Quds network, etc., killing some high-profile generals. Iran needs to reestablish this deterrence. They need to do it in a way that sends a signal to Israel, don't do that again. And it has to be real. But it can't over-retaliate and therefore trigger a broader war, because that is disruptive to the strategic direction that Iran was taking, not only vis-a-vis Israel, by having the axis of resistance slowly grind Israel down, but also Iran's strategic objective of improving its economic fortunes by plugging into a Eurasian Economic Union, better connectivity with Russia and China. So I think that Iran is very carefully weighing its options, and the political consequences of these options change on a daily basis. I think Iran is in communication with Russia, China, and its other allies, and with the West too. There's ways to put pressure on Israel that don't involve blowing Tel Aviv off the face of the earth. We just saw today Iran hijacked, not hijacked, that's the wrong word, but hijacked.
Yeah.
They took over an Israeli flagged container ship because the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait have been conspiring with Israel to get around the Houthi action in the Red Sea by sending container ships into the Persian Gulf, offloading them at Kuwaiti and Saudi Arabian ports, and then sending it over land to Israel. And the Iranians are saying, no, we're shutting down that pathway too, which is going to have real economic harm on Israel. So I think the Iranians are looking at their options and they're weighing out the consequences. And when they act, I think it's going to be a very deliberate, refined, balanced act that takes into account the need for escalation management. They don't want this thing to spin out of control. So I think that's what the Iranians are doing. And it's the sign of a mature nation. It's the sign of mature thinking.
And I would say that the timing is probably on Iran's side. I mean, it doesn't hurt them to wait a little bit longer to have maybe Israel and Western nations that support Israel sitting around worrying all day about what Iran is going to do next. It doesn't really hurt them.
Look what they did here. The threat of an Iranian retaliation prompted Israel to withdraw troops from Gaza. The Israelis have to pull troops out of Gaza and send them up north in case of a Hezbollah incursion. So what is Hamas doing? They're going back into the areas. They're reestablishing a presence so that if Israel comes back in, they're going to have to fight over that terrain all over again. No army likes to fight over the same piece of terrain more than once. This is a devastating loss for Israel. It's problematic for Israel. And Iran achieved that by not attacking, just by threatening the attack, the potential of attack. The Israelis right now have to divert a whole bunch of resources, effort, diplomatic attention to, an Iranian attack every day. The friction that's generated by waiting for Godot, so to speak, is real, and it wears down. And Iran, there's some friction on their part and all this stuff, but Iran's in control. Yeah, I've talked often about something called the OODA loop, the decision-making cycle, Observe-Oriented Side Act, fighter pilot term that's been adopted by business, by the Marines, by everybody. But you want to get inside your opponent's decision-making cycle. Iran owns Israel's decision-making cycle right now. They own it. And that's not a bad thing for Iran. It's a very bad thing for Israel.
Right.
And by the way, may I just interrupt a bit, because I've been reading through the news while you were talking, and a recent news came in that Israeli foreign minister accused Iran of piracy because of hijacking the ship, and now they want to that Iranian Corps of Revolution Guards to be acknowledged as terrorist organization. So what would it lead to? Isn't it opening of Pandora's box? Because the same way any country can accuse any other country of terrorism and get away with it. So where would we end up if we accuse of terrorism everyone we don't like? That's pretty interesting.
Accusing a military force.
Yeah.
U.S. Navy seizes ships all the time. So you really want? Come on, man. If you're calling the Iranians terrorists, what does that make the U.S. Navy? Does it make any of the navies that participate in the various sanctioning and enforcement mechanisms that are out there? This is crazy. It's stupid. But again, Israel is known for doing crazy, stupid things. I don't think there's too many. Look, outside of the United States, Great Britain just came out and told the United States, we're not going to, no British ships are going to be involved in defending Israel on this one. You're on your own. The world, nobody's lining up saying, oh, those poor Israelis, boy, those Iranians are being bad and they're doing horrible things. I think a lot of people are saying, well, that's actually a smart retaliation move because it does a lot of damage to Israel and it doesn't create the potential of a global conflict. So I don't think Israel's going to get too many people lining up to support them. The United States has to be careful. Like I said, you start branding the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps terrorists. Beware, because there's U.S. naval vessels in the Persian Gulf and in that vicinity that board ships. And, Iran's in the payback business and the reciprocity business. So I don't think the United States wants to go down that route. What the United States would prefer to do is bring this crisis to an end, which is why I think their focus should be continuing to put pressure on the Netanyahu government to bring about a permanent ceasefire in Gaza.
Yeah.
Right. And so, Yelena, did you have another audience question? I got one more, and then.
Yeah, you may ask your final question, and I think we'll be finishing the stream.
Okay. Yep. But sticking with the issue of Israel, I'm definitely not an expert in Middle Eastern affairs, or I'm not a military expert, really. And so when I first saw the situation, the fighting between Hamas and the IDF, I sort of surmised that Hamas doesn't really have much of a chance against the IDF because they're far better funded, they have far more firepower. But it seems like Israel's definitely struggled more than I expect. I knew they were going to struggle, but it seems like they actually run the risk of effectively losing to Hamas. And I also wonder if the Palestinian people are sort of dependent on international popular support to protect them, or do you think they can win this fight purely militarily? Or are they dependent on the Islamic world reaching out to help them as a whole?
Well, I mean, war is an extension of politics by other means. So every war, every military struggle is inherently political. Israel lost this war the moment it said that its definition of victory is the physical destruction of Hamas, because all that means is all Hamas has to do is survive. Simply by surviving, Hamas wins. And Hamas is not only surviving, but Hamas is inflicting casualty on the Israelis. The Israelis, Haaretz ran an article yesterday that said they lost everything. Israel won nothing in this. They lost everything. And I've been saying that from day one. They lost militarily, on a number of ways. The Israeli Defense Force is no longer, feared and revered. That people look at it as with disgust now. We don't respect them. Their lack of professionalism, and they've lost that aura of being the world's best army. And we now know that they're not the world's most moral army, but we also now know that they're actually pretty incompetent. And that if they went up against a peer level force, they'd probably lose. And that's a bad thing for the IDF that needs for the purpose of deterrence, this concept of invincibility. They're not invincible. They lost politically. They wanted to eliminate Hamas as a viable governing entity in Gaza and indeed amongst the Palestinian people. That didn't work. Hamas has more moral authority today than they have at any time. They've lost economically. Their economy is being crushed. Yes, the Palestinian people have been sacrificed. I mean, it's a horrible thing. And I really get a lot of people angry on both sides when I point out the fact that that was always going to be the case. I mean, Hamas may not admit it, but let's just be honest. Hamas carried out October 7th for the purpose of luring Israel into Gaza to do exactly what they did. Because how do you get the world to turn against Israel? You have to make Israel do things that are so horrible that the world rejects it. And Israel was pre-programmed to carry out atrocities in Gaza, the Dayab doctrine, collective punishment, mowing the grass, Amalek. Everybody knew that this right-wing government was going to invoke Amalek, that they were going to endorse genocide. Hamas provoked them to do that, and now the Palestinian people are paying the price. But from the Palestinian perspective, that's the only way you're going to get a Palestinian state, is to get the world to reject Israel and to endorse the notion of a Palestinian state. And in that, Hamas and the Palestinians of Gaza have won, because now the world is talking about the inevitability of a Palestinian state. No one was talking about the inevitability or the need for a Palestinian state on October 6th. Today, they're all talking about it. This is a huge victory for Hamas, a huge victory for the Palestinian people. Victory comes at a heavy price, especially when you're talking about freedom, freeing yourself from a brutal colonizer, to defeat the apartheid approach of Israel, to defeat the irrational Zionism of Israel. It lends itself to dehumanization of the Palestinian people and the implementation of genocidal policies. This isn't going to be free. You're going to pay a heavy price, and the people of Palestine have paid a heavy price. But I always bring up, Charles de Gaulle being briefed by the Allies before Normandy about the casualties that the French civilians would suffer for Normandy to be liberated. And the number that was briefed to him, I think, was between 80 and 120,000. The number turned out to be 60,000. 60,000 French civilians died to liberate Normandy. 60,000. This is why Charles de Gaulle never attended a D-Day celebration. I mean, it was, of course, it marked the beginning of the liberation of Europe, but it also marked the point where he signed off on 60,000 French deaths to make this happen. Put that in perspective. What casualties would the Palestinian people sign off on to have a Palestinian state, knowing that if they didn't go down that route, they would never have a Palestinian state? And so, the suffering of the Palestinian people is being exploited to win international support. Of course it is. And it's succeeded. The international community has rallied behind the Palestinian cause because of what Israel has done to them. And there's no going back on that. Israel can't undo the damage that's been done, which brings us back to Iran. And when you talk about retaliation, understand that Iran is already winning this war. The axis of resistance has already won this war. They've helped the Hamas achieve a tremendous victory. Why throw it away with an overreaction? So I think you have to factor in the fact that, Iran is already winning this. Israel's already losing. Iran doesn't need to do anything more than just reestablish the principle of deterrence when talking about retaliation.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I definitely appreciate your time. I do have one person, a contributor here, who wanted to offer you some words of thanks. Reagan Leaf. I'll go ahead and bring her on, hopefully. Oh, she's still
Hello, Scott.
Hello.
I just wanted to say thank you for your work. I couldn't catch you in Russia twice, but I tried, believe me. And I'm really grateful that I can finally just tell you how I appreciate your work. And I wanted to shake your hand, but I couldn't. But I wish I could.
Where are you from?
St. Petersburg.
You may have an opportunity to shake my hand in June. So
I would be glad. I will try to catch you again. I have both your books, and that's the. Thank you, Scott.
Well,
Just thank you.
Thank you very much, Reagan Leaf. All right, and once again, Scott, I appreciate you giving us your time. Sorry about all the Telegram glitches. Telegram is an interesting platform to operate on.
Yeah, got to learn it.
But I hope you liked it, and I hope you liked the new format too.
No, it's very good. We'll do it again down the road.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you very much.
hopefully you will join us once again, and then we'll give like bigger announcement to people, and more people would join. But there would be a recording for those who didn't follow and or those who didn't manage to get right to the start, and it will be published here, and I will forward to you so you can put it on your channel too.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you very much, guys. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, Scott.
Yes, you have a
Thanks.
good day.
Thanks a lot. It was nice to see you.
Okay. Have a good
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.